Hello friends, Pinello here, and I want to share with you a video I made of me inking a drawing of Wolverine. It's time-lapse, so I'm not actually drawing as fast as it looks like I am in this video. I basically took an hour and a half of video and cut it down to something more manageable for you to watch, because I don't think you want to sit through an hour and a half of me moving my brush around the page. And I actually cut the video short at an hour and a half and finished the drawing off camera. So the whole thing actually took me somewhere around 4 hours to ink. This video that I'm sharing right now is not necessarily a tutorial, it's just a demo. So I won't be talking too much about my process or anything, but I do get a lot of questions regarding my materials whenever I do a live inking demo on Instagram, so I thought I'd go over some of that with you right now. People like to know what type of paper I use, and it is the Strathmore, let me look at the cover because I always forget. Strathmore 300 series Bristol. It comes in 11 by 17 sheets, and depending on what size I want to draw on, I'll just cut it down. It's the one with the smooth finish. Then the ink that I use is Kuretake Black Ink 60, and the brush that I'm working with is a Raphael 8404 number 1, and sometimes for filling in blacks and for thicker lines I'll use a number 2. You might be wondering about the sketch that's behind my drawing. What I did is I did a tight composition sketch in Procreate, and I printed that out on my Bristol board super light, maybe about a 10% opacity, just so that I could barely see the lines. And in some places the lines didn't print dark enough for me to see well enough what I was doing when I was inking, so I just printed off another copy and kept it by the side so that I could refer to it whenever I was getting lost. So that's about all I have on materials and my basic process. I don't really have anything else to say about it, so I don't know how I'm gonna fill 30 minutes of video and make this compelling. You should probably just put this on mute and just watch the drawing as it goes through. That's probably more interesting than anything else I have to talk about right now. Let's see. I guess we should talk about Wolverine. My first entrance into the character was from the animated series. So I was interested in comics at that point, but I had never read any. My brother is a bit older than me, and he always had comics, but I never read them, and I was always interested in them. And so when X-Men came out, I was familiar with the fact that they were based on a comic series, so the show was enough for me to satisfy my needs for comics, and Wolverine was definitely my favorite character. Some of you, your favorite character might have been Gambit. You are wrong, Joey. It's Wolverine. Wolverine was the best on there. He's gone through a lot of costumes over the years. The one I drew is from the most current run, and I do like it, but I think that the best costume for me will always be the one from the animated series. I know a lot of you guys like the one from the John Byrne era with the brown and yellow. Yeah, that one's great too, but I just really like that classic one. I was thinking about why Wolverine was my favorite character when the animated series came out. I was in about 2nd grade, by the way, at that time, and he was definitely the favorite of most of my friends. They also were really into Gambit, and I think that those two strike a chord with kids out of all the rest, because their power sets are the easiest to play when you're just having imaginary play, when you're running around the playground, and you can be Wolverine because it's so easy to imagine that you have the claws. Or if you want to be Gambit, you can just pick up any object and throw it. The other characters, their power sets were more fantastical, like Cyclops. He had his eye beams, and so you could pretend like you're pressing your visor, but nothing's gonna be affected in the real world. So I think those kind of characters that are super easy for kids to imagine themselves as are the ones that end up having the most longevity in general. You think about other popular characters like Batman. He has no superpowers, so that one's just really easy to imagine yourself in. Superman has a ton of powers, but his main ones are his strength and his flight, so that's easy for kids to play as too. I think the Flash is another good one because most kids can run, so they just do that anyway. So I think that's one of the keys to making an enduring character is making it someone that the reader, audience member, whatever, can easily insert themselves into that. The other thing about Wolverine is he just had attitude. Like, he was always like, I go where I want to go. And when you're a kid, you want to have that kind of agency over your life. You don't want to be told what to do, when to go to bed, when to brush your teeth. I still don't want to be told when to brush my teeth, but I do it. Don't worry, guys. I just think that resonated. That definitely resonated with me as a kid. I think other kids were into Wolverine for that same reason. Why am I still into Wolverine as an adult? I don't know. I guess it's just like a nostalgia factor for it. I've been reading X-Men since about 1998, and my collection goes back all the way through most of Chris Claremont's run. So I've been reading X-Men for a really long time, consistently, and it's like comfort food now. While I've got your attention with this nice Wolverine drawing, I'd like to tell you about a project that I've been working on. If you're still listening and you didn't put it on mute like I told you to, that project is called Thunderbite. It is a weekly webcomic that I post on my website and on Patreon. It's the story of a man who essentially has a godlike power, and he knows that if he ever uses that power, he risks undoing something that is probably like the greatest thing that he's ever done. So he has to have the responsibility not to use that essentially ultimate power. And the story is about him being tested in ways that would make him want to break and fail at what he's trying to do by using that power. I don't know if that description made a lot of sense, but you should check it out. My website is hellopinello.com, and my Patreon is patreon.com/thunderbite. If you check it out over there and you want to support it and become a subscriber, you get access to a lot of behind the scenes content. For every page that I post, I also make several other behind the scenes posts. One has my scripts, so each page would have the portion of the script on there. I don't work in a normal script fashion because I am drawing it myself, so I don't have to break it down as formally as you would if you were giving it off to another artist. So it's kind of interesting to see how it gets from there to the next step, which is the thumbnails. So I'll do a post about my thumbnails. Mine are more detailed than some other people's would be. You know, a thumbnail drawing is supposed to be just a quick sketch to help you inform you as the artist on what your composition is going to be, how you're going to move the reader's eye from panel to panel, and how you move their eye within each individual panel. So for me, I do that super loose gestural version, but then once I have a version that I really like, I go in and I ink it with micron pens, and it's a very crude inking style for it, especially since there's not a lot of room. They're only about 2 inches by 3 inches. And then I take that, and since I've drawn it to scale, I blow it up to the actual size of the comic page, and those become my they're more or less my first draft of pencils. Then I take that into Procreate, and I keep refining the sketch in there, and eventually I ink it in Procreate. And that's the next step that I show in the behind the scenes, so you can see scripts, thumbnails, final inks, and then the next thing is the colored page. I don't do a separate post for that because you can compare that with the final lettered page that I present for each installment of the series. Other behind the scenes content you can get is you can get a Photoshop document that has all of my layers included in it, so that if you're somebody who is interested in figuring out how comics are made, you can go in there and you can look and you can see, oh, this layer is set to overlay and that's going to have this effect on the layers below it. This layer is set to multiply, it's going to have a certain effect on it. This layer is just a normal layer, so you can see how I do all my rendering, all that kind of stuff. Let's see, other things would be concept art. I do a ton of concept art for this book. Some of it's highly polished, some of it's pretty rough, but everything in the series, since it's a fantasy series, does not exist, so I have nothing to reference, so I have to design it all before I actually start drawing it on the page. Otherwise, I'll get lost and not have a good final outcome. So yeah, that's about it for Patreon. Oh, the other thing is, if you're a patron, I do giveaways every once in a while, and if you're a patron, you're automatically involved in that giveaway, so you get a chance to win original art every so often. Right now there's a piece of art by Mike Mignola that I printed out and I inked. It's pretty cool. It's got Batman and Hellboy in it. Yeah, you can check that out. Again, that website is patreon.com/Thunderbite. We're about halfway through the video now, so thank you for sticking with me throughout this whole thing. I know that I'm not a very good presenter right now. I say and a lot, and I pause a lot. I'm just not very experienced at it. I'm not experienced at it making videos. This is something that I'm working on, and I'll get better at it, so I hope you guys stick with me. I just want to be able to share my art with you in all the different ways that you like to consume this type of material. So I get a lot of attention on Instagram, especially when I do drawings like Wolverine, if I do a Batman, those main well-known characters. And I thought that you might like to see more how it's created, so that's why I made this video. I think it would be nice to do more videos like this in the future. Maybe I'll plan out what I have to say a little bit better on those. So again, thank you. I will keep making more of these, and they'll get better. I'd like to ask you what types of videos you'd like to see me make in the future. Are there specific characters you'd like me to draw? More X-Men, maybe some DC characters, maybe some characters that aren't even from comics at all that might be interesting to see drawn in a comic book style. Would you like to see how I make pages for my comics? It might be interesting to do a time-lapse video of just laying out a whole page. I don't know. There I go again with the ums. Just let me know in the comments, or you can email me at hellopinello@gmail.com. I'd love to hear from you guys. I'd also, especially if you are reading Thunderbite, if you wouldn't mind dropping me a line just to let me know what you think of the art or the story or the script, even if it's a critique and not praise. I love getting that kind of feedback because it helps me think about what I might do to make it better, even if it's something that I might not necessarily agree with the critique. There's usually something in it that rings true and gives me something to think about and get better at the work that I want to be doing. So yeah, I would really appreciate if you guys would leave any comments on that work or any videos you want to see. The email again is hellopinello@gmail.com. Okay, so I want to get back into talking about this drawing again for a minute, because I just did a portion of the drawing that is my favorite type of work to do when I'm inking and when I'm working in black and white with ink, and that is spotting blacks, spotting in all my shadows. The main reason that I love doing it is it does two things for the piece. One, it informs the viewer on the form and volume of the figure on the page, and two, the human eye loves contrast. It is just drawn to contrast. Anything where there's something super light next to something super dark is going to get your attention more than something that is like a medium dark next to something that's just slightly darker. So what I was doing is thinking about where my light source is coming from, where my secondary light source is coming from, and it's kind of hard to explain, where those two light sources would not necessarily meet, where both of them are furthest away from the light source, the area that's further there becomes a core shadow. So you get, I have a main light source coming from the left side of the page and a less bright light coming from the right side of the page. So you can see on the right side, especially of his arm there is a thin highlight area, then there's a shadow down that arm there, and then more light on the left side of it. And I don't know, I just think it looks really great. The more black you can get on there, the more contrast you can find. What I was just saying is going to make more sense when you do finally see the final outcome of this piece. For example, I'm going to want his face to be one of the focal points of this piece. So I'm going to make his mask very dark by the time I'm done with this, with mostly white on the dome of his head to offset that black, and then there'll be a background element that's mostly black kind of around that, so that you have super dark, super light, super dark, super light. Kind of makes a pattern that draws your eye there. Another element that I will want to pop out is going to be his claws, because those are a defining element of Wolverine, so I want to draw your eyes there. So those are just going to be stark black on white background, and because there'll be other things that are black that are adjacent to the white area around his claws, that's going to create that high contrast that is going to draw your eye there. If your piece has good shapes and you spot your blacks well, you really don't have to do a lot of rendering. All the cross hatching that is done on this piece is just because I like how it looks. I could have spent a little bit more time spotting in my blacks, and I probably wouldn't have had to render at all on it. You could literally just paint in Wolverine's mask completely black, and because you have that contrast on the yellow part of his mask adjacent to the black part, you just don't need any rendering there at all. It really pops out. Another thing I was doing with the blacks, as you can see on his leg, is there's going to be a black design in the background. It's not supposed to represent anything. It's just a design element. And by blacking out certain parts of his body that are up against that black, it's going to be kind of like he's coming out of the shadow. So that's also a way to play with contrast. Like sometimes you don't want there to be any contrast between two elements. Sometimes that's more interesting than having a lot of contrast. Today's video must be brought to you by the word contrast. I have literally just said contrast like 50 times in the last 2 minutes. So I'm just going to leave it there. I won't say it again. That's all I have to say about juxtaposing elements of light and darkness next to each other. We're getting close to the end of the video, so again, thank you guys for watching. I'm just going to let the video play out, and then where it leaves off, I'm going to add in just the finished image so you can see how it finally turned out. After I'd finished drawing it, after I finished recording and I went and finished the piece off camera, I busted out some technical pens. They were Copic multi-liners, and I added more cross-hatching because I had too much light down the center of his chest. And then I took my white opaque watercolor. It's I want to say it's a Winsor Newton brand, and I painted in some highlights where there's the piping of his costume, where there were a couple spots where I wanted to break up the rendering a little bit. I put a little bit of highlight there, and then I blacked out the background, and I took a piece of paper towel and I dipped it in my ink, and I used that to make a couple of the effects that you see on the background, that you will see on the background. And that's it. That wrapped up my piece. While I'm here, I want to thank my current Patreon subscribers. There's only 4 of you, but I really appreciate that you've jumped on, even though you jumped on before I even started posting a single page of Thunderbite, while I was still getting this whole thing figured out. So I want to thank Jesse Wind, Brian, Katie Bright, and Nicole Blankman. I had mentioned earlier that there is a giveaway going on. Right now, they're the only 4 entered, so if you want to jump in and get that sweet piece that I inked, you just have to go on to patreon.com/Thunderbite and subscribe at any tier. Even the $1 a month is just fine for that. The cool thing about Patreon is you can cancel at any time. So if you decide that Thunderbite just isn't working out for you, or it's not a good time for you to be supporting, you can cancel that pledge at any time. You can find me on Instagram. I have 2. There's @HelloPinello, where I post a variety of things, including stuff that's related to Thunderbite. And then I have Thunderbite Comic. Let's see, it's @Thunderbite Comic on Instagram, and that one's just dedicated to Thunderbite stuff. That's it, guys. Like I said several times already, I really appreciate you guys for watching. Any ideas for future videos would be greatly appreciated. I've run out of things to say. I almost made it through the whole video, but I didn't, so oh well. Next time. Alright, guys. Maybe I'll put some music or something to wrap this up. Thanks. Hey friends, I'm back with a final note. You probably noticed that the audio quality just died for a minute during that last segment. That's because I accidentally unplugged my microphone and didn't realize it until after I had finished recording. So there's that. Sorry. Anyway, love you guys. Here's the final piece. Bye.